Daniel Carter stood at the edge of the observation deck on Celestia Prime, his hands resting lightly on the cool metal railing. The vast expanse of space stretched out before him, dotted with stars that shimmered like tiny diamonds against the endless black canvas. It was peaceful here, or at least it seemed that way. For decades, humanity had worked hard to prove itself worthy of joining the Galactic Council, a coalition of civilizations from across the universe who shared one goal: peace. And for a while, it felt like they had succeeded. Celestia Prime was more than just an orbital hub. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when different species came together. Delegates from countless worlds walked its polished corridors, exchanging ideas and forging alliances. Daniel had always believed in this vision. As a diplomat, he saw himself as part of something bigger, a bridge between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. But lately, something didn't feel right. Behind him, Clara Hayes approached, her boots clicking softly against the floor. She carried a datapad tucked under one arm, her brow furrowed in thought. Clara had been Daniel's partner since their early days on Earth, and she knew him well enough to sense when something was bothering him. "You've been quiet lately," she said, stopping beside him. Her voice was calm but curious. "What's on your mind?" Daniel hesitated before answering. He turned to look at her, his dark eyes reflecting the faint glow of distant stars. "It's nothing specific," he admitted. "Just a feeling. Like we're missing something important." Clara tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You mean with the Council? Or us?" "Both, maybe." Daniel sighed and glanced back at the view. "We've come so far, Clara. Humanity went from being seen as reckless and dangerous to becoming a key player in maintaining universal peace. But sometimes I wonder if we've really changed, or if we're just pretending." Clara frowned at his words. She wanted to dismiss them as paranoia, but deep down, she couldn't ignore the unease gnawing at her own thoughts. Over the past few weeks, strange reports had started surfacing, encrypted messages intercepted by security teams, unusual activity near Earth's outer colonies. Nothing concrete, but enough to raise questions. "You think we're hiding something?" she asked finally. "I don't know," Daniel replied. "But I've been reviewing some old communication logs, and there are patterns that don't add up. Messages sent late at night, coded in ways even our systems can't fully decode. Someone doesn't want us to see what's going on." Clara stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded slowly. "If you're right, we need to find out what's happening, before it becomes a problem." The two fell silent, the weight of their conversation hanging heavily between them. They weren't just talking about rumors or suspicions anymore. They were questioning whether humanity truly deserved its place among the stars. Was it possible that beneath the surface of unity and cooperation, old instincts still lingered? Instincts driven by fear, greed, and the desire for power. As they stood there, watching the cosmos swirl silently in the distance, neither of them realized how close they were to uncovering a truth that would shake the very foundation of the universe's fragile peace. Daniel and Clara decided it was time to dig deeper. The anomalies in the communication logs couldn't be ignored, and they needed someone with experience to help them make sense of what they were seeing. That's when Alex Monroe entered the picture, a retired pilot who now worked as a mechanic aboard Celestia Prime. Alex had a reputation for being gruff but reliable. Daniel found him in one of the station's lower maintenance bays, tinkering with an old shuttle engine. "Alex," Daniel began cautiously, "we need your help." Alex glanced up from his work, wiping grease-streaked hands on a rag. His sharp blue eyes narrowed as he studied the two diplomats standing before him. "Help with what?" he asked, his tone wary. Clara stepped forward, holding out her datapad. "We've been noticing strange activity, encrypted messages, unusual movement near Earth's colonies. We think something's going on, but we don't have the resources to investigate." Alex let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "You're asking me? I'm just a mechanic. What could I possibly do?" "You've seen things," Daniel pressed. You've been around longer than most of us. If anyone can help us figure this out, it's you." For a moment, Alex didn't respond. He stared at the datapad in Clara's hand, then back at their faces. Finally, he sighed. "Fine. But if this gets me into trouble, I'm blaming both of you." With Alex on board, the trio began piecing together fragments of information. They spent hours combing through records, cross-referencing data, and following leads. It wasn't easy. Many of the files were heavily redacted or locked behind layers of security. But Alex's technical skills proved invaluable. Slowly, a clearer picture began to emerge. What they uncovered was unsettling. References to Project Elysium appeared repeatedly in the logs, though details were scarce. From what they could gather, it seemed to involve advanced weaponry designed for large-scale destruction. The project had supposedly been abandoned years ago, but the recent activity suggested otherwise. "This isn't good," Alex muttered one evening as they pored over a particularly troubling set of documents. "If someone's reviving Elysium, it means they're planning for war." "But why?" Clara asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "The galaxy is at peace. Why would anyone risk that?" "Because not everyone believes in peace," Daniel said grimly. "Some people still think humanity needs to look out for itself, no matter the cost." Their investigation took a darker turn when tensions flared elsewhere. A small fleet of alien ships approached Earth without warning, sparking panic among human populations. While the visitors claimed their arrival was routine, many humans saw it as a threat. Calls for increased military readiness grew louder, and some even argued that humanity should sever ties with the Galactic Council altogether. The situation worsened when Ethan Cole, a fellow diplomat and close friend of Daniel's, confronted him about his snooping. "You're stirring up trouble where there isn't any," Ethan warned. "Leave it alone, Daniel, for everyone's sake." But Daniel couldn't ignore what he knew. As the days passed, the stakes grew higher, and the line between paranoia and reality blurred. Clara noticed the toll it was taking on Daniel. His usual confidence was slipping, replaced by doubt and unease. "We'll get through this," she told him one night as they reviewed their findings. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Daniel nodded, though his expression remained troubled. He wanted to believe her, but deep down, he feared they were already too late to stop whatever storm was brewing. Clara spent hours poring over the files they had uncovered, her eyes scanning line after line of fragmented data. She knew there was something important hidden in the jumble of codes and redactions, but it felt like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Then, late one night, she found it, a single reference buried deep within an old archive. Project Elysium wasn't just about advanced weapons. It was about creating something far more dangerous. The file mentioned a prototype weapon called Ragnarok, designed to harness dark energy and destabilize entire star systems. Her heart raced as she read the details. If Ragnarok fell into the wrong hands, or worse, if it was already operational, it could destroy everything humanity had worked so hard to build. Clara immediately contacted Daniel, who arrived at her quarters looking tired but alert. When she showed him the information, his face turned pale. "This changes everything," he said quietly, running a hand through his hair. "If this gets out, it won't just be Earth on the line. The whole galaxy will be at risk." They agreed they needed more answers, and fast. Through Alex's contacts, they managed to track down someone who might know more. Mia Brooks, a former engineer who had once worked on classified projects for Earth's Central Command. Finding her wasn't easy. She lived off the grid, hiding from those who might want her silenced. But after some convincing, Mia agreed to meet them in secret. The meeting took place in a dimly lit cafe on one of Celestia Prime's lower levels. Mia was cautious at first, glancing around nervously as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. But when Clara explained what they had discovered, Mia's guard dropped, replaced by a mix of fear and anger. "You don't understand how bad this is," Mia whispered, leaning closer. "Project Elysium never really ended. It evolved. Ragnarok isn't just a weapon, it's a statement. Some people think humanity deserves to rule the galaxy, not share it. They see peace as weakness. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low but urgent. Who's behind this? Who's funding it? Mia hesitated before answering. It's not just one group. There are factions within Earth's government, corporate interests, even rogue military officers. They all have their reasons, but the end goal is the same: power. As Mia spoke, Clara felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a movement, one that could tear apart the fragile unity of the galaxy. Before they left, Mia handed them a small data chip. "This has everything I've managed to gather," she said. "Be careful. If anyone finds out you have it, you're dead." Back at their makeshift headquarters, the trio reviewed the new information. What they saw horrified them. Plans, schematics, communications, all pointing to the fact that Ragnarok was nearing completion. Worse still, there were hints that its creators intended to test it soon, targeting a remote alien colony as a demonstration of humanity's strength. "We can't let this happen," Clara said firmly, breaking the silence. "If we expose this, maybe we can stop them." But Daniel looked unsure. "And if we fail? If they silence us before we can act?" Alex spoke up then, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Then we fight. We do whatever it takes. Because if we don't, no one else will." For the first time since starting this investigation, Daniel felt a flicker of hope. They weren't alone in this fight. Not yet. Together, they began making plans, knowing the road ahead would be dangerous. But as Clara stared at the data chip in her hand, she reminded herself why they were doing this. Peace was worth fighting for, even if it meant risking everything. The trio knew they were running out of time. Every moment they delayed meant Ragnarok moved closer to activation, and the stakes couldn't be higher. But as they prepared to act, a betrayal struck that none of them saw coming. Ethan Cole, Daniel's longtime friend and fellow diplomat, had been watching them closely. He didn't trust their sudden secrecy or the late-night meetings with Alex and Mia. When he overheard fragments of their plans, he made a choice, one that would change everything. Ethan leaked their findings to Earth's Central Command, framing Daniel, Clara, and Alex as traitors. According to his report, they were conspiring against humanity, spreading false information to undermine Earth's standing in the Galactic Council. It wasn't long before arrest warrants were issued for all three of them. Daniel was the first to realize something was wrong. As he walked through Celestia Prime's corridors, he noticed security officers moving with unusual purpose. His communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Clara. "We've been compromised," she said, her voice tight with panic. "They're coming for us." Without hesitation, Daniel rushed to meet Clara and Alex at their usual meeting spot. The three quickly gathered what little evidence they had, datapads, files, and Mia's data chip, and flowed into the station's labyrinthine lower levels. Behind them, alarms blared, echoing through the halls as guards began sweeping the area. "This is bad," Alex muttered as they ducked into a narrow maintenance tunnel. "If they catch us, we're finished." "We can't let them catch us," Clara shot back, clutching the data chip tightly. "Not until we expose the truth." Their escape drew attention not only from human forces, but also from alien observers aboard Celestia Prime. Whispers spread among delegates about the humans on the run, further eroding trust in Earth's leadership. For every step forward they took, it seemed like 2 steps back for humanity's reputation. As they reached the docking bay, Alex led them to a small, outdated transport ship he had been repairing. "It's not much," he admitted, "but it'll get us out of here." The engines roared to life just as a squad of security officers stormed into the bay. Shots rang out, narrowly missing the ship as it lifted off. Clara clung to her seat, heart pounding, while Daniel gripped the controls beside Alex. They broke free of Celestia Prime's gravitational pull and vanished into the vastness of space. For hours they drifted in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Daniel wrestled with guilt over trusting Ethan, replaying their friendship in his mind, and wondering how he could have missed the signs. Clara stared out the viewport, her jaw set with determination. Alex focused on navigating, occasionally glancing at the others but saying little. Finally, Daniel broke the quiet. "We can't go back," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "But we can't give up either. If we stop now, everything we've done will mean nothing." Clara nodded, her eyes blazing with resolve. "Then we keep going. No matter what happens, we find a way to stop Ragnarok." Alex glanced at them both, then back at the stars ahead. "All right," he said, "but where do we even start?" Daniel hesitated before answering. "We find allies, someone who still believes in peace and in humanity." As the ship sailed deeper into the unknown, the weight of their mission settled heavily on their shoulders. They were fugitives now, hunted by their own kind and distrusted by the rest of the galaxy. But one thing was certain: giving up wasn't an option. The transport ship limped through space, its engine sputtering as Alex worked tirelessly to keep it running. They needed a safe place to regroup, but finding one wasn't easy. Humanity's betrayal had made them pariahs, and most species wouldn't risk sheltering fugitives from Earth. That's when Clara remembered the Velari, a reclusive aquatic race known for their neutrality. Though they rarely interacted with outsiders, the Velari had always valued peace above all else. Daniel was hesitant at first. "They don't trust humans," he pointed out. "Why would they help us?" "Because we're not asking for ourselves," Clara replied firmly. "We're asking for the galaxy. If Ragnarok is unleashed, it won't just hurt humanity. It'll destroy everyone." With no other options, they set a course for the Velari homeworld, an ocean-covered planet orbiting a dim star. As they approached, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A calm, melodic voice spoke in perfect universal standard. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered Velari territory. State your purpose." Clara stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We seek refuge and counsel. We mean no harm." There was a long pause before the voice responded. "You will be allowed to land. But know this, harboring you comes at great risk. Do not betray our trust." When they landed on the shimmering surface of the water world, they were greeted by Ambassador Lirin, a tall, graceful being with translucent skin that glowed faintly under the light. Her large, dark eyes studied them carefully as Daniel explained their situation. He showed her the data chip containing evidence of Ragnarok, his voice steady despite the weight of what he carried. Lirin listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she turned to Clara. "You ask much of us. Sheltering fugitives could bring war to our doorstep." "I understand," Clara said softly. "But if we fail, there may not be a doorstep left to defend." After a moment of silence, Lirin nodded. "Very well. You may stay for now, but you must prove yourselves worthy of our protection." During their time with the Velari, Clara formed a bond with Lirin. The ambassador shared stories of her people's history, speaking of how they had chosen isolation over conflict centuries ago. "Peace is fragile," Lirin told her one evening, as they stood on a floating platform overlooking the endless waves. "Even among those who cherish it, fear can take root." Clara thought about humanity's own struggles. The wars, the greed, the constant push for more. "Do you think we can change?" she asked. "Can we learn to let go of our anger?" Lirin didn't answer right away. Instead, she gazed out at the horizon, where the sun dipped below the water's edge. "Perhaps," she said finally, "but change requires sacrifice. Are you willing to pay that price?" While Clara found solace in Lirin's wisdom, Daniel wrestled with doubt. He spent hours staring at the files on the data chip, wondering if exposing the truth would make any difference. Alex noticed his mood and pulled him aside one day. "You can't give up now," he said bluntly. "If you do, then Ethan wins. Everyone who doubts humanity wins." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "What if we're too late? What if Ragnarok is already beyond our control? Then we fight anyway. Alex shot back, because doing nothing is worse than failing. Inspired by Alex's words, Daniel began working with Clara to devise a plan. Using old equipment salvaged from the Valari archives, they prepared to broadcast their findings directly to the Galactic Council. It was a risky move. If Earth intercepted the transmission, it could mean disaster. But they knew they had no choice. As the days passed, the trio grew closer, united by their shared mission. For the first time since fleeing Celestia Prime, Daniel felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but surrounded by allies, even reluctant ones, he believed they might still stand a chance. When the time came to send the broadcast, none of them slept. They checked and rechecked every detail, knowing their lives and the fate of the galaxy depended on getting it right. The night before the broadcast, none of them could sleep. Daniel paced the small chamber they had been given by the Valari, his mind racing with doubts. What if the Council didn't believe them? What if Earth's forces traced the signal back to the Valari homeworld? Clara sat quietly at a makeshift desk, reviewing the files one last time, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the settings on the transmitter. Alex worked nearby, piecing together the final components of the old equipment they'd salvaged. "We're ready," Alex finally said, breaking the tense silence. His voice was calm but firm, though his face showed signs of exhaustion. "All we need now is courage." Clara looked up from the transmitter, her eyes meeting Daniel's. "Courage isn't the problem," she said softly. "It's whether it'll be enough." At dawn, they gathered around the device, their hearts pounding as Alex powered it on. The hum of energy filled the room, and for a moment, everything seemed fragile, like the smallest spark could shatter their plan. They aimed the transmission directly at the Galactic Council chambers, where delegates from across the universe were convening for an emergency session sparked by rising tensions between Earth and its neighbors. As the signal connected, Daniel took a deep breath and began speaking. His voice was steady, even as adrenaline coursed through him. "To the representatives of the Galactic Council, this message comes not from enemies of peace, but from those who seek to protect it." He paused, glancing at Clara before continuing. "We have uncovered evidence of a secret weapon being developed by rogue factions within humanity. Its name is Ragnarok, and its purpose is destruction on a scale none of us can afford." Behind him, Clara activated the visual feed, projecting images and schematics onto the screens in the council chamber. Delegates gasped as they saw detailed plans for the weapon, along with intercepted communications confirming its existence. The room erupted into chaos, voices shouting over one another in disbelief and outrage. Sophia Lane, Earth's ambassador, stood abruptly, her face flushed with anger. "This is a lie," she declared, slamming her fist on the table. "These so-called fugitives are traitors to humanity, spreading propaganda to undermine our place in the galaxy." But cracks began to form among Earth's delegation. One representative hesitantly raised a hand. I've heard rumors about Project Elysium," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I thought it was abandoned years ago." Another nodded slowly. "There have been whispers. Too many coincidences lately." As the debate raged on, Clara stepped forward, her tone resolute. "If we wanted to destroy trust, why would we risk everything to bring you this information? Humanity is better than this. We must hold ourselves accountable, or lose the respect of every species here today." Her words struck a chord. Several alien delegates rose to support her, calling for immediate action. The Council voted to impose strict sanctions on Earth until further investigations could take place, isolating the planet politically and economically. It was a harsh decision, but necessary to prevent potential catastrophe. Back on the Valari homeworld, the trio watched the live broadcast from a secure monitor. For a moment, relief washed over them. They had done it. They had exposed the truth, but the victory felt hollow. Earth's reputation lay in ruins, and the galaxy braced itself for what might come next. Daniel sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "It's not over," he murmured. "Not yet." "No," Clara agreed, her gaze fixed on the screen. "But it's a start." Alex clapped a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Let's focus on what's next. We bought ourselves some time. Now we figure out how to stop Ragnarok for good." Outside, the waves of the Valari Ocean crashed against the floating platforms, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the fragile balance they were fighting to protect. Back on Earth, the fallout from the broadcast was immediate and chaotic. News of Project Elysium spread like wildfire, dividing the population into two camps. On one side were those who believed the sanctions against Earth were unjust, a punishment for humanity's past mistakes rather than its present actions. They saw the Galactic Council as oppressive and argued that humanity should stand on its own, free from alien interference. On the other side were people like Rachel Myers, a determined journalist who had spent years uncovering corruption within Earth's government. She called for transparency and accountability, urging citizens to confront their flaws instead of ignoring them. Protests erupted across the globe, some peaceful and others violent. In major cities, crowds gathered outside government buildings, chanting slogans that ranged from "Earth first" to "Truth over fear." The division deepened when rogue elements within Earth's military seized the moment to push their agenda forward. These extremists viewed the sanctions as proof that the galaxy had turned against them, and they saw Ragnarok not as a deterrent, but as a tool to assert dominance. In secret command centers hidden beneath mountains and deserts, these factions worked tirelessly to activate Ragnarok prematurely. Their plan was bold and reckless. By targeting a remote alien colony, they hoped to demonstrate humanity's power and force the Galactic Council to lift the sanctions. To them, it wasn't an act of aggression, it was survival. Meanwhile, Daniel, Clara, and Alex received fragmented reports of the growing unrest, while still sheltered by the Valari. Using outdated scanners aboard their transport ship, they intercepted communications revealing the extremists' intentions. The target was identified: a small, unassuming colony belonging to the Zenari, a peaceful species known for their contributions to interstellar medicine. If Ragnarok struck there, millions would perish, and the fragile peace of the galaxy would shatter completely. "We can't let this happen," Daniel said, his voice heavy with urgency. He stared at the coordinates flashing on the screen, his mind racing. "We have to stop them." Clara nodded, though her expression was grim. "But how? We're outnumbered and outgunned. Even if we reach the colony in time, what can we do against a weapon like Ragnarok?" Alex leaned over the console, studying the data. "We don't need to fight it head-on," he said after a moment. "If we can disable its targeting system remotely, or even redirect it, we might buy ourselves enough time to warn the Zenari." It was a risky plan, but it was all they had. With Lirin's reluctant blessing, the trio prepared to leave the safety of the Valari homeworld. Before departing, Lirin approached Clara one last time. "Remember," she said softly, "peace is not just the absence of war. It is the courage to choose understanding over anger." Her words stayed with Clara as they launched into space once more, setting a course for the Zenari colony. Along the way, they encountered resistance. Patrol ships loyal to Earth's Central Command attempted to intercept them multiple times. Each encounter left their vessel battered and strained, but Alex's quick thinking kept them flying. As they neared the colony, Daniel noticed something alarming. The Zenari were preparing for evacuation, likely having detected unusual activity near their system. "They know something's wrong," he said, pointing to the flurry of shuttles leaving the planet's surface. Clara clenched her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. "We're running out of time." Alex glanced at her, then back at the controls. "Then we make every second count." The weight of their mission pressed down on all three of them, but they pushed forward, driven by the hope that they could still prevent disaster. Somewhere in the distance, Ragnarok loomed. an invisible threat carried by the cold void of space, and behind it lay the future of the galaxy, hanging precariously in the balance. The Zinari colony loomed ahead, a serene world bathed in soft amber light. Its surface was dotted with sprawling domes and lush greenery, a testament to the species' harmonious way of life. But as Daniel, Clara, and Alex approached, they realized time was slipping away. The evacuation efforts were chaotic. Shuttles launched haphazardly into orbit, carrying frightened families and essential supplies. It was clear the Zinari sensed danger, even if they didn't know its full scope. "We need to warn them," Clara said urgently, her voice tight with emotion. "If they scatter without knowing where Ragnarok will strike, they'll still be vulnerable." Daniel nodded, his jaw clenched. "Alex, can you patch us through to their communication network?" "I'll try," Alex replied, his fingers flying over the ship's controls. After a tense moment, he managed to establish contact. A Zinari leader appeared on the screen, a tall, slender being with shimmering skin that reflected the faint glow of their dying sun. "This is Ambassador Kale," the figure said, their melodic voice tinged with worry. "Who are you, and why have you entered our airspace?" Clara stepped forward, her tone calm but urgent. "We're here to help. Your colony is in danger. A weapon called Ragnarok has been aimed at your system. You need to evacuate further out, beyond its range." Kale's large, luminous eyes widened in shock. "A weapon? From whom?" "From Earth," Daniel admitted grimly. "But not all humans support this. We're trying to stop it." Kale hesitated, then nodded slowly. "We will trust you, for now. What do you need from us?" While the Zinari worked to accelerate their evacuation, Daniel and Clara focused on disabling Ragnarok. Using data intercepted earlier, they identified the weapon's targeting system, a complex AI designed to lock onto specific coordinates. Their plan was risky. They would attempt to hack into the system remotely, disrupting its trajectory long enough for the Zinari to escape. "It's going to adapt," Alex warned as they reviewed the schematics. "Once it detects interference, it'll counteract anything we do. Then we'll have to move fast," Clara said firmly. She turned to Daniel. "I'll go in manually. I can rewrite the core programming if I'm inside." "No," Daniel protested immediately. "It's too dangerous. The radiation levels alone." "I don't see another option," Clara interrupted, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "If I stay on the ship, we won't get close enough to make a difference. Trust me, Daniel." After a long pause, Daniel finally nodded. "All right, but I'm coming with you." They boarded a small shuttle and flew toward Ragnarok, which now hovered menacingly near the edge of the Zinari system. The weapon was massive, its dark metallic surface absorbing light like a void. As they docked and entered its interior, the air grew colder, heavier, as if the machine itself radiated malice. Clara moved quickly, her hands trembling slightly as she connected her datapad to the central console. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, each adjustment met with resistance from the AI. "It's fighting back," she muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. Outside, Daniel kept watch, fending off automated drones sent to eliminate intruders. Gunfire echoed through the corridors, sparks flying as metal clashed against metal. "Hurry, Clara," he shouted, his voice strained. "I'm almost there," she yelled back, her focus unbroken. With one final keystroke, she reprogrammed the targeting system, redirecting Ragnarok's aim away from the colony. Exhausted, she slumped against the console, but the relief was short-lived. Warning alarms blared, signaling critical damage to the core. "We need to leave. Now." Daniel grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the exit. Behind them, the weapon began to destabilize, its systems collapsing under the strain of Clara's changes. They barely made it back to the shuttle before Ragnarok exploded in a silent burst of energy, the shockwave rocking their vessel violently. As they watched the debris drift into space, both felt a mix of triumph and sorrow. They had saved the Zinari, but at what cost? Clara leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes. Her body ached, and the radiation exposure would take its toll. Still, she smiled faintly. "We did it," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, his expression torn between pride and grief. "Yeah," he said softly. "We did." The aftermath of Ragnarok's destruction left Daniel and Clara physically and emotionally drained. The shuttle drifted silently through space, its engine sputtering from the strain of escaping the weapon's explosive demise. Clara lay in her seat, pale and weak, her breathing shallow as the effects of radiation exposure began to take hold. Despite her condition, she managed a faint smile when Daniel asked if she was all right. "I'll be fine," she said softly, though they both knew it was only partially true. Her voice carried a quiet resolve, even as her body betrayed her. "We stopped it, Daniel. That's what matters." Daniel clenched his fists tightly, guilt gnawing at him. He had argued against her going into the weapon's core, but now he couldn't imagine how they would have succeeded without her sacrifice. "You shouldn't have done it," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Not alone." Clara reached out, her hand brushing his arm gently. "It wasn't just me. You kept those drones off my back. We did this together." Her words were meant to comfort him, but they only deepened his sense of responsibility. He promised himself then that her bravery wouldn't be in vain. As they limped toward the Zenari colony, reinforcements from the Galactic Council arrived, ships sent to investigate the explosion and ensure the safety of the endangered species. Ambassador Kale greeted them personally, their luminous eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved us," Kale said simply, bowing slightly. "Your actions will not be forgotten." While the Zenari tended to their injured and displaced, Clara received medical care aboard one of the council vessels. Doctors warned that her radiation exposure was severe and irreversible, but she insisted on staying awake, determined to see the mission through to its end. Daniel stayed by her side, refusing to leave even as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him. News of their success spread quickly across the galaxy. Humanity's rogue factions were exposed, and public outrage grew louder than ever. On Earth, protests intensified, with citizens demanding justice for the atrocities committed in their name. Rachel Myers played a pivotal role in shaping the narrative, publishing detailed reports that highlighted the dangers of unchecked ambition and fear. Her work inspired many to push for reform, sparking hope that humanity might still find redemption. Meanwhile, Ethan Cole, the man who had betrayed Daniel and Clara, faced consequences of his own. His actions came under scrutiny, and evidence emerged linking him to the rogue factions behind Ragnarok. Stripped of his position and credibility, Ethan became a symbol of everything humanity needed to leave behind: mistrust, greed, and division. Back aboard the council ship, Daniel sat beside Clara, holding her hand as she rested. "Do you think we made a difference?" he asked quietly, staring out at the stars. Clara squeezed his hand weakly. "We gave them a chance," she replied. "That's all anyone can do." Her strength waned over the following days, but her spirit remained unbroken. Before she passed away, she made Daniel promise one thing: to keep fighting for peace, no matter how hard it got. "Don't let anger win," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Not theirs, and not ours." When the time came, Daniel mourned deeply, but privately. He knew Clara's sacrifice had saved countless lives, and he vowed to honor her memory by continuing their mission. With support from the Galactic Council, new safeguards were implemented to prevent similar threats in the future. Humanity, though scared by its mistakes, began taking steps toward healing and rebuilding trust. As Daniel stood once more on Celestia Prime, watching the bustling activity of delegates from countless worlds, he felt a flicker of hope. Peace was fragile, yes, but so was rage. And if humanity could learn to choose understanding over anger, perhaps the universe would know peace again, not just in fleeting moments, but forever. Months passed, and the galaxy began to heal. The scars left by Ragnarok's near destruction were deep, but they also served as a reminder of how close everything had come to falling apart. Humanity faced intense scrutiny from the Galactic Council, with many species calling for severe consequences. Some argued that Earth should be stripped of its seat at the table entirely, while others believed humanity needed guidance rather than punishment. Rachel Myers became a prominent voice during this time, using her platform to advocate for accountability and change. Her reports highlighted not only the rogue factions responsible for Ragnarok, but also the everyday citizens who had stood up against them. She reminded the galaxy, and humanity itself, that while mistakes had been made, redemption was possible. "We are defined not by our failures," she wrote in one article, "but by how we rise after we fall." Daniel Carter returned to Celestia Prime. His presence met with mixed reactions. To some, he was a hero, a symbol of humanity's potential for good. To others, he was a painful reminder of the dangers posed by his species. But Daniel didn't care about titles or opinions. He carried Clara's memory with him every day, letting her words guide his actions. Don't let anger win. The Galactic Council implemented new measures to ensure transparency among all member worlds. Regular inspections of military projects were mandated, and stricter protocols were put in place to prevent classified initiatives like Project Elysium from resurfacing. Humanity's progress would now be closely monitored, but many saw it as a necessary step toward rebuilding trust. On Earth, the divisions caused by Ragnarok slowly began to mend. Protests continued, but their tone shifted, from outrage to calls for unity and reform. Citizens demanded better leadership, more ethical policies, and a renewed commitment to peace. Slowly, humanity started proving that it could learn from its mistakes. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks and moments of doubt, but the effort mattered. One evening, Daniel stood on the observation deck of Celestia Prime, staring out at the stars. He thought about Clara often, wondering what she would say if she could see how far things had come. Would she feel proud, or would she remind him there was still work to do? A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the universe." He turned to see Lirin, the Valari ambassador. Though her people rarely ventured beyond their homeworld, Lirin had made an exception to attend a council session. She approached him, her glowing form shimmering faintly under the artificial light. "I'm just thinking," Daniel said with a small smile. "About Clara. About everything." Lirin nodded knowingly. Her sacrifice changed much. But remember, peace is not a destination. It is a journey, one that requires constant care. "You're right," Daniel replied, "and I think we're finally starting to understand that." As the days turned into weeks, Daniel threw himself into his work, helping to rebuild bridges between humanity and other species. He collaborated with delegates to create programs promoting cultural exchange and mutual understanding. It was slow, difficult work, but each step forward felt meaningful. In quiet moments, he allowed himself to grieve, to miss Clara and Alex, and all the others who had given so much. But grief no longer consumed him. Instead, it fueled his determination to honor their sacrifices by creating a better future. The universe knew peace again, not because humanity had earned it, but because it had chosen to fight for it. And though the road ahead remained uncertain, Daniel took comfort in knowing that hope was stronger than fear. Together, the galaxy had faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger, not because perfection was achieved, but because imperfection was embraced. Peace, fragile and beautiful, endured.